The Giants are set. They are devoting their whole heart and finances to landing one of Shohei Ohtani or Yoshinobu Yamamoto in the coming weeks. Don't take it from me. That is a direct quote from one of the most respected and trusted baseball reporters out there.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit the subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started, could it possibly be anywhere else other than that quote that I read you in the beginning by MLB Network insider Jon Paul Morosi. Jon Paul Morosi also contributes for MLB Network Radio, Fox Sports Radio, and among other places, also NHL Network. So anyway, but to me, like on the trustometer, like you can, I've discussed John Heyman, who famously arson judge tweet was John Heyman. I've discussed Jim Bowden, and I would say that Morosi is even above, certainly above Bowden and even above Heyman. He's just not someone out there who just throws around words. What he says here, this is a direct quote again, quote, "Sources tell me the Giants are set. They are devoting their whole heart and finances to landing one of Shohei Ohtani or Yoshinobu Yamamoto in the coming weeks." This is a whole segment on MLB Network about this, and he also says about the Giants and this situation, this is a flagship franchise in MLB that is looking for a new identity, and Shohei Ohtani for the Giants would mean more than probably any other team acquiring him because of, yes, what he would mean to the Japanese American fan base in the Bay Area, but more broadly speaking, it's on the field. They need to find a way to get back into this National League West race. He also said, when you look at the Giants lineup and you look at their rotation, what the Giants can present to Shohei Ohtani in particular is not necessarily a fully blank canvas, but basically that. They can say, we're comfortable with a six-man rotation when you come back to pitch in 2025. We can do that. If you want to be able to have this position in the lineup or whatever it's going to be, or wherever it's going to be, we can open this up to you. This becomes your team. And that actually reminds me of Mike Petriello, who's a smart kind of analytics writer for MLB, formerly Fangraphs contributor. He broke down which team needs Shohei Ohtani the most, and he ended up concluding that it was the San Francisco Giants. And it wasn't just based on feeling, it was based on statistics and numbers, and it just indeed and Morosi echoes that here, saying it would mean more to no other team to get Ohtani than it would mean to the San Francisco Giants. And I agree with that. And ultimately, though, what it will come down to, and this is discussed in the segment if you watch it on MLB Network, is that it's ultimately going to be up to Ohtani where he wants to play. So, the Giants are not, they could just go insanely over even what any other team offers. They could do that as a tactic to just try to get this done because they're that desperate to get back to relevance. Like, there's just so many reasons why they need to do something like this. The title of 2 episodes ago for me, or even was it yesterday, was Go Big or Go Home. And it was a big picture of Shohei Ohtani. And the point was they have the financial flexibility, and we defined what that means. Basically, they have almost no future commitments. And so you could take on a huge annual, you could pay 50, 60 million a year to Ohtani, and it would still, they would be in a fine financial situation for years ahead. Because they have almost no money committed currently to future seasons beyond 2024. So anyway, being set and having their whole heart and finances devoted to landing one of these guys. I'm focusing on Ohtani first, but I mean, what would these guys mean to the Giants? What it would mean, if the Giants got Ohtani, just imagine, let yourself imagine, because there are pessimists out there. You might call yourself a pessimist or a realist and still be on the side of Ohtani's not coming here. But what he would mean to the Giants is just so much in the way of interest. This guy is the most interesting and best player in baseball. And when he's not pitching, he's not the best player in baseball. When he's pitching, he is. And just the interest level in the Giants would just skyrocket. And it wouldn't just be locally, it would be internationally, right? You'd have people, tons of people in Japan tune in to watch Shohei Ohtani play every single day. And man, it would just be as big, if not bigger than, it's hard to say if not bigger, but then the free agent signing of Barry Bonds. And so they should have their whole heart and finances devoted to it. But that doesn't mean that they'll come away with him, because there are plenty of other teams. We don't know which ones necessarily. You can kind of logically just figure, certain teams like the Pirates and the A's and the, Brewers, they're not going to be signing this guy. So you can narrow it down to the big market teams, and the Giants are in that category for sure. And given their pursuits of Judge and Correa and all that, and Harper at the time, I've been saying this all offseason. Of course, they are going to be in on these guys, but it's just going to come down to where do they want to play, and do they want to play for you? But I believe, and again, I've said this before, but is it the optimist in me, or is there some truth to it that all this national kind of national media narrative that the overwhelming favorites are the Dodgers? I just knowing Shohei Ohtani, which I don't, but knowing what I know about Shohei Ohtani, I'm not sure the Dodgers are the kind of team that he would necessarily want to go to. And I know that conflicts with what we've also heard, which I believe to be very true, that his number one priority is winning. And so this becomes I want to break this down in 2 different ways here, and also talk about Yamamoto. But basically, the Dodgers are obviously clearly better than the Giants. Their roster is just better. And yet I'm saying Ohtani wants to win more than anything. And I'm also saying I can see an argument to be made for picking the Giants over the Dodgers, even if your priority is to win, if you're Shohei Ohtani. And I'm going to explain why in just a minute. And before we get into that, this episode today is brought to you by our extremely good friends over at FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Talking about your team, I mean, the 49ers going, I think it's in Philadelphia, right? To play the Eagles this Sunday, huge game. Maybe you skip on that one because you know 150 bonus bets guaranteed if your team wins. You could pick any team, put a $5 money line bet, and if that team wins, you get 150 in bonus bets by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you've been thinking of joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app, as you would expect, is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options from spreads to props and over-unders and more. So again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, as promised, we are going to get into my argument for why I don't think you can write off the Giants like some people do when it comes to Shohei Ohtani. I think it's more so Giants fans than the national media who writes off the Giants when it comes to Ohtani. Although, if you watch this segment on MLB Network, you did have like Harold Reynolds push back and say like, but this guy wants to win. And if you want to win more than anything, why go to the Giants? And that is a fair point given how the last two seasons have gone. But I'm gonna explain, in my opinion, why I think it's not, why, like, the logic that could lead to it actually happening. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, I hope we're breaking down breaking news that the Giants have signed Shohei Ohtani. Look, are we probably going to have that episode tomorrow? Probably not, but I hope we are. I am an optimist eternally, and you can't stop me from being that way. We've also got a ton of mailbag questions if nothing comes up, but like if juicy rumors like this happen, big signings around the league, we cover them every day, and the winter meetings are right around the corner, getting started at the beginning of next week. So, also, by the way, you must know that Locked On launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts. Like if the Giants were to sign one of these guys, you will find me on that show. Plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Anyway, getting back to the point at hand, the case, the rationalization, but why I think it's actually not totally out of the realm of possibility. If your priority number one is to win, why go to a team that, if you look at the last two seasons combined, has a below 500 record? It's right around 500, but it's a little below 500 record. And you've spent years, toiling away on a team that has been in a similar state. That being said, this is like one of the points, but it's not my main point. That was with Ohtani that the Angels were achieving 500-ish or worse records. They've been worse than the Giants the last couple years, significantly, even with this guy. So it's not apples to apples at all. You take Ohtani off the Angels, and suddenly you're looking at like a 100-loss team, potentially, even though they have Mike Trout. It's unbelievable how that team never made the playoffs with Shohei Ohtani. But I digress. I want to start with the point about a team like the Dodgers and why, to me, you can just make a case, like I said, quote unquote, knowing Ohtani, which I don't, obviously, personally, but does he want to join a team that is already loaded with superstars? And it's not like, oh, because he wants to be the guy. I don't think that is the thing. I think it's more about, does he want it to be easy? That kind of gets to the root of it for me. I don't think he wants it to be easy. And if you're just joining a team that already has an easy time rolling out 100 wins like each and every year. And you've already got Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman locked up for the long haul. Is that what he wants? I think he wants a challenge. And others have said they think that he's motivated by wanting to be the best ever. He wants to be the best player ever. And there's definitely an argument to be made that playing at Oracle Park may significantly hinder one's ability to be the best ever, because the ballpark is going to knock down your offensive numbers significantly. And so that is a very valid counterpoint to what I'm saying. However, the challenge, the fact that Barry Lamar Bonds made Oracle Park look small and nobody else has since, and Ohtani has the kind of power to do so. He hits a lot of balls to center field. Giants have one of the shortest center fields in the league after they moved it in due to their, adding bullpens out there in center. He also hits a lot of balls to Triples Alley area. He pulls the ball. He hits it kind of to all fields. But, if you want to be the best ever and you put up bonkers numbers in a really difficult hitter's park, although it has been more actually league average in terms of hitter friendliness, but in terms of home runs, it's towards the extreme bottom in terms of hitter friendliness. But the challenge and the fact that, if you know the history and you know that just basically nobody outside of Barry Bonds has been able to make the park look small. The Giants haven't had a single player hit 30 homers in a season since Barry Bonds. And years before he even played his last season. So it's been 20 years almost. I think every other team has had at least 3 or 4 different times where a player has hit 30 or more home runs. Every other team, and the Giants have had 0 over that span, 2 decades. And Shohei Ohtani is a guy, who could, have a 60 homer season. That he has that kind of power. And so the challenge of Oracle Park, and the challenge of not just joining a team where you're gonna coast. So the personal challenge, plus it is a good pitcher's park. So if you can hit like Bonds in that park and get the benefit of pitching there where it is a good place to pitch, and some of the stuff Morosi said about Japanese fan base, and also it could be his team. And what else did he say? The stuff that he said, they're the type of team that would be willing to do a 6-man rotation, no questions asked, if that's because Ohtani, I think, has expressed a desire to do that, especially with his arm now wearing down a couple times and requiring Tommy John surgery. But I just don't see him as the kind of guy who wants to take the easy road. When he joined the Angels, that was a big surprise to everybody. And by the way, the Giants were a finalist for Ohtani back when he first came over here. And it wasn't about money. He signed a rookie contract. It wasn't about money at all. The team that got him, the Angels, they paid him the league minimum salary for 3 years and then arbitration for 3 years. Just like any other rookie entering the league. Even though he could have gotten a big contract, he didn't want to. So, again, the challenge. He could have made over $100 million, but he said no. He wanted the challenge and to not have anything handed to him. And so joining a star-studded roster, I just don't see it as his thing. But at the same time, I don't think he wants to join a team that stinks and is just going to not make the playoffs. And so you have to believe in the vision and the direction of the team. And that brings me to my next point, which is that I'm not saying the current roster is really good and everybody's sleeping on them. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am going to say is that the current roster gets underrated. Now, you can be underrated no matter how bad you are, right? You could be like the Giants are like a 500-ish team, but people act like they're worse than that, is essentially what I'm saying. But you add a player of Ohtani's caliber, it's different than the Angels. And so I'm going to make the case why I think the current roster is underrated, and we'll also discuss Yoshinobu Yamamoto, what he would mean, the timelines for both of these players. Much more to get to in just a minute. And before we get into it, all right, as promised, we're going to discuss the current roster being underrated a bit. Again, I'm not saying they're super good and you're just missing it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying they're underrated. That doesn't like I said, you could be horrible and still be underrated. I don't know. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, the latest and greatest, whatever's going on with the Giants, anything major in the sport, and also we're sitting on a bunch of mailbag questions as we get ready. Just 2 more episodes until the winter meetings next week. And I'll be back in the United States, sadly, but for the winter meet, not to be there, but I expect action. So speaking of which, the timelines, I guess I'll get to that at the end. To finish the point about the current roster, I think being underrated, I just to reiterate what I said earlier, the Angels what was the Angels' record? Let me look it up quickly. It was 73-89. 73-89. So the Giants won 6 more games than the Angels, and the Angels had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on their team. Granted, they both missed some time, but still, Ohtani was the unanimous MVP, so he didn't miss enough time to I don't have his numbers pulled up in front of me, although I should, because they're you just always want to look at them because they're that eye-popping. Shohei Ohtani, he hit, he had 599 plate appearances. He hit 44 home runs. He stole 20 bases. He hit 304 with a 412 on base and 654 slugging. 15% walk rate. 180 weighted runs created plus. His bat alone, plus base running, worth 6.6 Fangraphs wins above replacement. And his pitching, which got cut short, only 132 innings, 23 starts, by runs allowed per 9, 3.8 Fangraphs wins above replacement. So 3.8 plus 6.6 is... what is that? That's over 10 WAR. Fangraphs WAR. So we are literally saying, if you replaced Ohtani, if you put Ohtani on the Giants roster, and replaced your worst pitcher and your worst hitter, I don't know. It's not as straightforward necessarily, but you just add 10 wins if this guy's hitting and pitching, essentially. And that was peak Bonds. And so that's what we're talking about here. And what I'm saying is the Giants, the last 2 years combined, are basically a 500 team. With Ohtani, if he was pitching, they're like a 90-win team, is what that means. And so it's not, the Angels were a 73-win team with him having a 10 WAR season, plus Mike Trout playing some number of games. He missed a lot of time, but he did play and put up some numbers. And so it's not just what is the team now, it's what would the team be with Ohtani. And they also have that total financial flexibility moving forward. Like I said, there's very few players under contract for 2025, and starting in 2026, it's just Logan Webb for 26, 27, and 28. And so you don't want to join a team that is got a bunch of bad contracts on the books to the point where you're like, well, they're not going to be able to make additions ever. The Giants have like a blank slate. I wouldn't call it in the same way Morosi was calling it in terms of like their roster is a blank slate, but their future obligations are a blank slate and can be shaped however they want. They can go out there and sign like whoever they want, basically, because they've got these clean books moving forward. And then I think you talk about some of the short-term guys, like some of these deals like Michael Conforto, Mitch Haniger, whatever. Like those guys, Conforto's deal is up after this year. Haniger has an opt-out after this year, and if he doesn't opt out, he's here for one more year after that. So it's 2 years max of Haniger. But then you look at a guy like Thairo Estrada. I think, Jeff Passan of ESPN recently wrote a piece, and he said the only guys on the Giants roster who you could like definitely know will be on the team in 2 years are Logan Webb and Patrick Bailey. And I kind of took offense to that. Like Thairo Estrada just had a 3.9 Fangraphs WAR season, which is like borderline all-star caliber. And he also missed a month. And the year before that, 2.8. And so we're talking about, a solid player who's only 27 years old and is under team control for at least 3 more seasons. Yeah, 3 more seasons. And so he's not going anywhere and is like your starting second baseman, everyday player. Camilo Doval, you've got, an all-star closer in Camilo Doval. He was like the talk of the All-Star game, and he's under team control through 2027. So 4 more years of Camilo Doval. And then, yes, Patrick Bailey through 2029 and Logan Webb signed through 2028. So they don't have nothing here. And then you also start looking at Kyle Harrison, Luis Matos, Marco Luciano, and some of the young pitching they have coming up in Tristan Beck, Keaton Wynn, and others, a whole wave of others. It's not as kind of bleak as people paint it out to be. They just need these impact players. That's like the missing ingredient is the impact players. And like Ohtani, he's not going to pitch next year, so that I don't think he does quite enough to put them over the hump, because pitching, he did just put up 6+ WAR, like 6 wins of value over a replacement level player simply with his bat and without any kind of defensive contribution, which is insane because he had such a great offensive season. But, the Giants would still need to add pitching if they, even if they signed Ohtani. And so kind of lastly, the report here is that they're set on signing, and by just, again, being set on it doesn't mean that they will come away with one of them, because there's extreme competition for the top players. And Yamamoto is like an exceptional case in that he's only 25. He is the best pitcher in Japan, probably ace caliber in the major leagues, and again, only 25. And those players just do not come around very often. And so it is going to take a haul financially to sign either of these players. And in terms of the final contracts, Yamamoto expected to get or exceed about $200 million. Ohtani around $500 million, but we just don't know where these numbers might go, especially if a team like the Giants is just desperate and is just willing to bend over backwards to make that splash that everybody knows they need to make. So buckle up, Giants fans. It's going to be a wild ride. And in terms of the timeline, Ohtani, there have been legit reports that he could sign before the winter meetings. And we're literally days away from the winter meetings. And the rest of that report is like either before or by the end of the winter meetings. And so we could be like literally, the winter meetings end in a week. And so we could be a week away at most from Ohtani making a decision. And we haven't heard anything, which is how he wants it from what we've heard. And then Yamamoto, it's going to be a little bit of a slower process from what we've heard. Starting with like Zoom calls and then like teams moving on to the next round and then having in-person meetings, I believe, next week. I'll have to clarify that. But anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, breaking down the latest with the Giants, Major League Baseball, and then if nothing's going on, we've got a bunch of great mailbag questions to get to as well. And by the way, also, as you know, because I told you already, but I'll tell you again, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.